It's working.
Soon, the Black Cauldron will be mine.
Cinderella story.
You want answers?
We're on a mission from God.
Inconceivable!
Take your stinking paws off me.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Have fun storming the castle.
Hey everybody. Welcome to Story Cauldron, finding the folktales, fables, and philosophies behind your favorite Hollywood films. I'm Bobby, and I'm just a film buff.
I'm Anthony, and I like stories.
You like stuff.
I like stuff.
I'm Garrett, and I'm here.
All right. So today we're going to be introducing the new show and exploring the 1985 film from Disney's Dark Ages, The Black Cauldron. So, Anthony, what is this whole show about?
The show's about stories and where our stories come from. We all like to go to the movies. I think that's one of those things that pretty much everybody enjoys. There's some kind of movie out there for you. Not everybody goes to the same movies.
Die Hard.
Everybody should go to that movie, obviously. But yes. Where are these stories coming from? When you look at especially stories that deal with fairy tales and magic and folklore and the stuff that we're going to be seeing in like the Black Cauldron, it's really common to see a lot of tropes, a lot of similar things showing up all over the place, and
it's the kindergarten lesson behind it all.
The kindergarten lesson, sure. That sounds better than what I said.
Well, I mean, that's everybody goes to preschool. They tell you Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You know, well, first of all, just don't break into people's houses. That's one of the big morals of the story. But we're going to get deeper into that, and we're going to talk about what happens, what influences the stories, and why we have the stories in the first place. I mean, what's the lesson to be learned?
Can I just say, I love that as soon as we start recording, that's when every single siren in town goes off and starts playing right past when we're recording.
Yeah.
Go figure.
That's what happens.
Murphy's Law. Just so long as the fire alarm doesn't go off again.
Oh. All right. Well, moving on. Garrett, tell us about the movie that we're going to be tearing apart today.
Okay, so today, like Bobby said, we are going to be going through the 1985 The Black Cauldron, blah, blah, blah. See if I can get used to talking. We have a plot synopsis here from IMDb written by Anthony. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name because...
Not me. Different Anthony.
Different Anthony. Yeah, not this Anthony. But let me just get into this. This is a story of a young man named Taran, who is an assistant pig keeper with boyish dreams of becoming a great warrior. Henwin, a magical oracular pig, is kidnapped by an evil lord known as the Horned King. The villain hopes Henwin will show him the way to the Black Cauldron, which has the power to create a giant army of unstoppable soldiers. With the aid of a stubborn princess named Princess Eilonwy, an exaggerating bard named Fluter Flam, and a pestering pungent creature called Gurgi, Taran will try to save the world of Prydain from the Horned King. Taran and his new friends embark on the quest to find the dark magic Black Cauldron, the item of ultimate power before a diabolical tyrant, the Horned King, can. So, thank you, IMDb, for making my life easy.
Heck yeah. So, we have the Black Cauldron, and everybody should know this story, but, of course, Disney blacklisted it from being put out to home video.
Shame.
For 10 years?
13, I think.
13 years?
What a lucky number.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was released in 85, and the first time it was released on home video was in 1998.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, 13 years.
So we were both off. Oh, wait. Oh, shoot. No, math.
Learn math. Your PSA for the day, kids.
Yeah.
Stay in school.
Learn your maths.
So, when did you guys first see this movie? Maybe that'd be a good place to start. Because I'll be honest, this was not one of those movies that I watched a lot growing up. I didn't have a lot of really deep emotional connections to it.
I watched it a lot growing up.
I don't know if I should admit where I first watched this show. Catholic school. This is one of those Disney movies that you probably shouldn't watch in Catholic school. You
Oh,
got
what?
the witches. You've got the
the giant evil horned ruler of death.
Yeah,
who
and, like-
totally isn't Satan.
totally not. The undead army. I don't know. Just magic pigs.
Wait, you watched it in school?
We watched it in like the after school program at
Nice.
Catholic
Oh,
school.
solid.
Oh, memories.
So wait, how old were you?
Oh man, I would have been about 10 or 11.
Dang.
Yeah, everybody was excited. It just came out on video, you know.
Were you? Was it?
I had to do math to figure that one out, but I do remember that.
Were you terrified by it?
You know what? I was just kind of like, what is this? It's totally different than the other Catholic school favorite, Ted E. Bear Halloween, you know. But so I mean, it was. I mean, there's a lot that went into it. But yeah, I think the overarching message of it, you know, like the whole self-sacrifice thing for the greater good, kind of, yeah, that's like what they wanted us to focus on, not like the witch with the bodacious tatas.
It's a technical term.
Yeah, it's a technical term.
much
So
so.
anyway, that's yeah, first time I remember watching it. It was the after school program back in like 99, 2000, something like that. But
Yeah, I know that's the scariness of the show is, I think, one of the reasons why Disney was so ashamed of it for a while. It's because, I mean, it is dark. I mean, there's blood, there's screaming skeletons, there's a lot of the kinds of stuff that you don't tend to see
a
in
sword that'll rip you apart
Yeah, a sword
by
that'll
itself.
I mean, the cute, adorable little pig almost gets decapitated.
Yeah, they are placing it on the block, on the
Yeah.
chopping block.
Yeah.
And then like 2 seconds later, you see the butcher carving up a ham.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Not the same ham.
not the
Not
same
the same
ham.
ham.
Yeah. Oh, and so if we didn't say it already, there are definitely spoilers. But if you think you need spoilers for a 32-year-old film, we can't really help you with that.
Plus, the books were written in what, the 60s?
Oh, that's
Yeah, the
right.
60s.
So, I mean-
that's even older than that.
Granted, there's always differences between the book and the movie. So
Very much so. in this
Hugely
case.
so. So
But this was the first Disney movie to come out with a PG rating. And they were like really worried about that just because, you know, when people think Disney, they tend to think, you know, flowers and happy and everything rated G.
well, yeah,
So-
especially in the 70s.
we're gonna
Yeah.
scare the poop out of some kindergartners.
But it was just a big deal because it had never happened before.
To do a
darker
movie.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, and even though this movie did not make a lot of money. It only in the box office barely made half its budget back. So there were a lot of reasons for Disney to kind of set this one in the back of the closet for a while and pretend like
It never
was-
happened.
Yeah, this was like the second cousin at the family reunion that everyone pretends doesn't exist. Because but at the same time there was this kind of relatively small group of people who really loved this movie, a big cult following that has kind of brought it back in recent years, especially as folklore and fairy tales have become more popular in pop culture, you know, with the rise of things like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, and this stuff is so hot right now that this Black Cauldron has seen a couple of re-releases, and there's even rumors that it might be up for a reboot in the next few years. Disney,
Live action, I'm guessing.
Ooh, I hope so.
well, we'll see. We don't. It's just kind of rumors that Disney has renewed their rights to it,
Yeah.
but what direction they might take on it, yeah, it's anybody's guess at this point.
Yeah, even if, like I was about to say, even if that is the case, it's like still in the early development with everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if anything, it'll keep us in supply of episodes.
Yeah. So
Well, anyway, since we were talking about Lord of the Rings and high fantasy and all these folklore things coming behind them, let's talk about the background of the actual movie and story, because I mean, there's a lot to pick apart.
oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, where should we even start?
Well, Garrett actually read one of the books.
One of the books a while ago.
My copy of the book.
Yeah, your copy of the book that I kind of
Oh,
stole.
so you read it too?
I've read it too. Yeah.
Oh, I'm the odd guy out.
With a picture of the Horned King on front. Like, he's a terrifying looking dude.
He's got some big muscles though. So.
And skulls.
Crush your head. Sorry, that got dark really fast. No, the Black Cauldron is based off of the two first books of the Prydain Chronicles by Lloyd Alexander, the Book of Three and the Black Cauldron, which is where it gets its namesake. I've only read the Book of Three, which gives the exposition to the entire series, so it doesn't focus too much on the Black Cauldron and necessarily the events that are in the movie. But it is a very good book.
It does talk about the war.
It does talk about the war. I feel like the movie kind of doesn't really explain it that much.
No, you get to the fair folk and they're like, is the war still happening? And you're like, what war?
What war? Yeah.
Yeah, he barely mentions it at the beginning that he wants to go be a hero.
Yeah.
Other than that,
And-
it's all about the
And he was wondering if the war was over too. Nobody has an idea in this movie.
Yeah, I think the where Disney kind of like left off was like, whoa, there's a lot that's happening. Let's just see how far we can like go in 7 minutes, you know. And then you see Taron, the protagonist, he kind of just screws up everything in the first 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
So like everything that he was asked to do, like, oh, whoops. Now everybody's about ready to die. 7 minutes into the movie. Did we mention it was kind of dark?
No, I think that this book, I was just talking to Anthony earlier about it. It is written for a younger audience, but I feel like the story itself would fit an older audience, but comprehension level, it's lower, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I feel it's like a good example of like a YA type book.
kind of like Harry Potter, but before Harry
Yeah.
Potter, much
Yeah.
smaller. I mean, I was surprised to look at the book here at how thin it is. I was expecting a thick Harry Potter sized tome, but this is really, I mean, what is that, like 180 pages?
It's got to be, easy to digest.
Let's see. 219.
All right.
So close. Say it again.
But, yeah. So I mean, we have the actual book, Lloyd Alexander. He pulled from Welsh mythology, pretty much.
Yeah. He was an American. He was not Welsh by birth, but he served in World War II and spent some time training in Wales. And while he was there, he found that he's the one person in history who fell in love with the Welsh language. And
Because nobody can pronounce it.
oh my gosh, it is a beast.
Oh,
but
just
he really fell in love with the culture and the myths and the stories. They captured his attention, and so after the war, he started telling his own stories. Now, the Chronicles of Prydain are not Welsh myth. They are kind of loosely based on ideas in Welsh myth, and that's kind of what this podcast is all about, looking at how those stories change over time, as these seeds are planted and they grow into other things, and then other people take the ideas and plant them and they grow into other new things. Alexander was very consciously doing that. He was trying to take these Welsh myths and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to tell my own story.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like all those en vogue DIY shows. We're gonna take some reclaimed barn wood and we're gonna make a butcher block. It's pretty much the same thing. It's taking from the past and recreating into something for the audience of today.
Basically, myths are mason jars, and and this is Pinterest.
And back in the day, it used to be jelly, but now we put in like shiny lights, and we drink beer from them at hipster bars and stuff like that, and which I do quite a bit. But moving on, we it's building blocks, and he pulled a lot from some of the old Celtic traditions of like oral traditions, and he created his own high fantasy world, including some pretty, I don't know, what would you say, pretty similar things to like Arthurian legends.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think I don't know the books very well, but I know the movie, and
Which is exactly what we're talking about.
right, exactly. And so, as far as the movie goes, absolutely, I'd say that Taran is a mixture of two very prominent characters in Welsh myth, and Arthur is one of them. King Arthur, who I know we don't think of him as being Welsh, think of him as being British, or English, but British is, Britain is all of those different countries: Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales. The earliest records or the earliest stories that we have of Arthur actually come from the Welsh language, at least. So you can definitely see that in the movie when you have this young hero coming out of nowhere,
This assistant pig keeper.
picking up a magic sword and going off to fight evil and become a hero. That's what he wants to do. And one of the things that really caught my eye when we watched it this time was towards the beginning, when he loses the pig, when he loses Henwin. At the beginning, he's staring in that pool of water and he's dreaming about himself covered in armor, in this golden armor. It's not in every story, but in several stories about Arthur is dressed in at least a golden helmet and maybe golden armor as well. So little calls like that in the narratives are definitely drawing your mind to King Arthur.
Oh,
And
exactly.
Excalibur. Although this isn't Excalibur that he's wielding it.
Well, we're gonna slaughter the name, but like Durnwin.
Durnwin. Sure. Close enough.
Yeah, which is like a story from the Prydain Chronicles. Well, a sword from the story that Taran finds in the movie. He finds it in the dungeons of the Horned King. He escapes with Princess Elanwe.
Is that how you say it?
Elanwi.
Elanwe. Yeah.
And Fluterflam.
And Fluterflam. But he escapes the dungeons to go into what looks like the catacombs. And they find this king, this great warrior. Taran himself even says, "Oh, he must have been a great warrior." Sorry if I
Excellent
offended
accent.
anybody.
Nice. I liked it.
But he grabs the sword as soon as they hear somebody, walking around. He grabs the sword and starts running. And, as soon as they're in trouble, what happens to the sword? I mean, it pretty much takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, it has a mind of its own.
And just helps defend, the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds pretty similar.
Which I like, but it kind of bothers me because he stole it off of a dead guy.
Well, he
He
said,
was sense.
worthy.
he wasn't using it.
Yeah,
That's what he
true.
said.
True.
It's so. So here's the thing: Durnwin is actually its own sword in Welsh lore. There is a sword connected with this guy named Rhydric, which would light up when a worthy person would wield it. It would light up as if it were on fire. And that's that's
Pretty
kinda
much what happens in the movie.
In the movie, there's all these lights and fireworks and things whenever he's
Cutting through steel.
cutting through everything. And that's more like Excalibur. Excalibur is this sword that is supposed to be sharp enough to cut through not necessarily anything, but
almost like indestructible, pretty
steel.
much. Yeah.
And so the sword here in the Black Cauldron has elements of both, and that's a great example of this kind of development of stories over time. I mean, we're not saying that the Black Cauldron sword is exactly the same thing as Excalibur. We're not saying that it is exactly the same thing as this other sword of Rhydric's. It's its own thing, which is kind of influenced by both.
Kind of like a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, I'm gonna want this characteristic.
Well, yeah, and that's actually the great granddaddy of modern fantasy, right? Good old J.R.R. Tolkien. He wrote this. Well, he gave this lecture in the early 30s, which is it's a famous lecture series at the University of St. Andrews that is still going on. Like, people give it every year. But he was asked to give a lecture at the school about his work, and so he gave a speech which was then collected into a few different collections. Long story short, it's called On Fairy Stories, and it gives Tolkien's philosophy of fantasy and storytelling, and it's actually where we get the name for this podcast, because in his presentation he describes mythology and fantasy stories like soup. This soup that cultures throw things into. It's like a big stew that all sorts of different cultural ideas and historical events and things that people love and remember, they all just kind of get thrown into this mishmash of stew, and they bubble and they recombine and they come apart and together. And every generation ladles out their own bowl of soup. And it's all coming from the same place, but it's all uniquely different. There's different chefs every time he talks about the cooks being important. The author is important because the author gets to tell a new story, but the author never acts in isolation. The author is drawing from her background and the stories that she knew as a kid, and so he puts it this way, that speaking of the history of stories, and especially of fairy stories, we may say that the pot of soup, the cauldron of story, has always been boiling, and to it have continually been added new bits, dainty and undainty. So we're never going to be as simplistic as saying, well, this is that other thing, just in a new form. But it's kind of like, you mix the flour and the butter and the sugar, and then you get cookies. But cookies aren't flour. They're better. They're something new.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it all together.
Awesome. Now I know where our name comes from.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Story Cauldron.
Cauldron. You can make a pretty safe bet that I'm going to talk about Tolkien a lot as we go through here.
Yeah, well, I mean, this this movie made me think of Lord of the Rings quite a bit itself anyway.
Oh, yeah. Even when we were watching it, they would say something like, the marshes of Morva. Huh.
That sounds like Mordor.
Yeah, it does.
Well, and I wonder, it's hard to say, because and Tolkien even talks about this, how it's really hard to identify the elements in the soup exactly. It's hard to say, well, you're telling this story because you know that story. It's not that explicit usually, so it's hard to say. But I wonder if the Black Cauldron, the movie, wasn't influenced by Lord of the Rings pretty heavily, even though the Black Cauldron, the book, was written earlier. Now, the Lord of the Rings obviously was written even before the Black Cauldron books were written, but they weren't really popular in America until kind of around the same time.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if maybe the depiction of the Horned King and some of the elements with the Black Cauldron being such a vile, evil MacGuffin.
Excellent.
If that wasn't back, kind of influenced in that way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I started thinking about it, as soon as I was like, oh, you're gonna give. Well, let me use my words real quick. You're going to take this pig and you're going to go on a journey to keep this pig safe. Gee, it sounds like, I don't know, a hobbit in a ring. And then along the way, you start picking up all these people to help you out.
Yeah, and then you have this cursed object that you want to destroy that can't be destroyed.
That can't be destroyed.
Yeah.
Unless, it's, well, spoiler alert, somebody willingly kills themselves to destroy it. It's very, yeah,
Similar.
dark.
Oh yeah.
That too. I'm just thinking of like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to throw the whole person into the fires of Mount Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's, it's decidedly different, but there are similarities throughout the entire thing, and that's more or less what we are exploring in this podcast.
So I said earlier that there were two characters that I think Taryn is kind of a mishmash of. Arthur's one, and the other is actually even more prominent. A guy named Bran. Bran the Blessed. Might be Bran. I think it's Bran.
I was reading a little bit about him when we were doing research for this.
What do you know about Bran?
Nothing.
Okay. Because he's kind of like the Arthur of Wales specifically. Bran is the Welsh hero.
The Golden Boy.
Yeah, kind of. He's a giant.
Oh well.
But that's a good thing. That means he's really strong and powerful, and he's a king. And he is. Well, he shows up in quite a few different stories in some of the more famous Welsh collections of myths, but there is the story of his death is the story about this cauldron. There's a cauldron called the Père de Denny, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, and the Père de Denny brings people back to life. And there is this, if I remember right, there's this evil person who's using this cauldron to bring an army back to life.
Gee, that sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah,
also,
sounds kind of familiar. And Bran actually, it's a little unclear if this was necessary or if this is just what happened. But Bran dives into the cauldron and breaks it from the inside. And he dies in the process.
And who was that?
Bran.
Oh,
Bran
okay.
the Blessed. Looks
The
like Bran.
giant
Bran
king.
muffin.
Yeah, but it has like that little thing over the A.
Yeah, it's got some accent on it.
so we don't.
Bran, I think it's Bran. I don't know.
I was
For all intents and purposes for this podcast, we're just gonna go with Bran.
Bran, so he dies, and then his this a really common thing and it's hard to say exactly why, but a really common thing in Welsh myth is decapitations. In fact, you can find in archaeological discoveries in Wales collections of severed heads. It looks like it was a thing that you would take like in battle.
That sounds
to show
delightful.
your prowess. Yeah, it's cozy. But they cut off Bran's head and they kept his head as kind of like a memento of it. And by them I mean his followers, his people kept his head.
At least it wasn't like on a pike out in front of the castle. or
No.
something.
It was like this treasured, revered thing, which actually comes back into play later on with some of the Arthurian legend. Because I would say if you want my short summary of the Black Cauldron, I think this is basically just a complicated way of throwing in a bunch of stuff about the Holy Grail. I think that's what the Black Cauldron is, because there's a few different directions that different Grail lore all points back to the Black Cauldron.
We're talking about like legit Grail stories, not Monty Python's take of the French
Python.
farting in people's directions.
Yeah, no Indiana Jones. I mean, that's kind of like the pop culture.
Yeah,
That's the McDonald's version of
the Happy Meal.
Grail
That's
lore.
an excellent way to put it.
Which, I mean, it's fun. It tastes
it's great.
good. It's just not really good for you, and it's not really substantive. But
Earlier when you said Bran, I thought you said Dawn.
Dawn.
And that's where I got confused because in the
Prydain.
Prydain.
just pretend you're saying Britain, because that's
I
the
know. I was
Welsh
thinking,
word for
how
Britain.
can I put it in there? There's no T's. There is a group called the Sons of Dawn.
Sons of Dawn, like the sun. coming up in the morning?
D-O-N.
Oh.
Sons of Dawn.
Sons of Dawn.
And their descendants, and it has like a little thing. They're related to the gods of Welsh mythology, blah blah blah. And they help in the books. They weren't even mentioned in the movie, but
I think if we were to have a list of movies that changed stuff from their source material, the Black Cauldron would be like top 3.
Just, well, yeah.
Seems like.
The amount.
Right.
That, and since it only focused on part of the story instead of the entire
Yeah.
way like the books do.
And thinking back on it, they really did follow most of the Black Cauldron-ish, not so much the Book of Three. I mean, the whole exposition for the movie was like 2 sentences. They're like, oh yeah, there's a war. There's a war?
Thank goodness for a narrator, though.
Oh yeah. They were very conscious about like, we need this character to say something mysterious so that
To foreshadow what's going to happen.
Yeah, so the audience knows everything that's happening in the background.
Isn't that? I don't know if that's a mark of a good movie though. If you just need exposition so much, if you're not showing it. But
Yeah.
but I guess maybe is that what you're saying, that they had to do that because they cut so much of that show?
They had to
Yeah.
because they cut this like 180 page first book down to a couple sentences. They're like, well, okay.
That takes a lot of balls.
Yeah, you're like, wait, why is there a Horned King?
Yeah, there just is.
They're just
He's scary.
He's scary. He looks like a dude wearing antlers.
Yeah.
I feel like this is kind of the movie is if you take all of the books and condense it down into like an Ernest Hemingway style short story. You have no idea what's going on coming into it. You have no idea what happens after. You're just there for the middle.
Well, that's a nice way to put it. I can see that.
There you go.
But that's how a lot of myths actually would operate, though. You would have, you're starting to read a fairy tale because it says once upon a time, and then it finishes with they lived happily ever after. It's like it gives you, it's like the frame of a picture. There's more stuff going on around the edges of the frame, but you're just looking at this little bit here. You're looking at this little 80-minute segment for this movie, or this little 219-page segment for this book. That's the mark of a good story there, I think, when you've got the world building going on so deeply that this seems realistic.
It's just all entwined.
Yeah, it's entwined, and I'm stealing almost not verbatim, but stealing quite heavily from Tolkien on that. I mean,
Hey.
he's the whole idea of the framing. That's his language, the picture frame.
It's not like we stole the name of the podcast.
Oh yeah, we're shameless. Whoops, shameless about it. But okay, so Gurgi, what do you think of Gurgi?
Oh, Gurgi, the dog man.
Let's talk about him.
Yeah. So basically, munchings and crunchings, Wilfred Brimley.
I actually have that written down. Gurgi equals Wilfred Brimley.
It really does.
I don't know why they always have to, like, he's covered in fur, but he still needs a mustache.
And it's a different color too.
Yeah,
you know,
like,
so
you
it has
can
to be
tell he's
different.
got a
Oh
mustache.
yeah, he's very
You like Gurgi?
personified. Oh man. As a whole, I like Gurgi just because what he represents in the movie.
Okay.
Stoners?
He's annoying.
Yeah,
He is so annoying.
He's hard for me to understand. I have to be
Yeah.
honest.
He really likes to rhyme. Crunchings and munchings, smackings and whackings. It's like
He's cute.
every.
And did I totally just miss why he just started calling Terran Master?
Flattery.
Yeah, well, like, through the whole thing.
Wait, do
he's
you
all
not
like,
call your friends master?
Master? I don't know, Master. No, he's
He thought he was a king for some reason.
yeah, I don't understand. He stole an apple and he's all like, "Oh, Master."
Well,
And
was
then
it after
he
the
did-
sword?
He
Did
didn't
steal?
act. No,
No,
it was
still the
before
Called the
the
master
sword.
even before the sword?
There's probably something in the book about it, but I have no idea.
Yeah, because I just kind of got sidetracked. I was like, why does he keep calling him Master? He's stealing and threatening all these other people, but he comes back to Terran. He's all like, "Oh, Master, I found the piggy," and it's all right. I must have missed something there, but
He's useful.
he is very
for
useful.
advancing
true.
the plot.
He's he
He
he definitely knows how to throw a kink into things. However, he does redeem himself, and but yeah, Gurgi. And I was doing some research on Gurgi, and there is a basis for his name in the old Welsh tales.
Right.
It's spelled
Really?
a little bit different, but
Yeah,
what
there is a
isn't in
Gurgi.
Welsh? And But yeah, they were also saying that the people from the movie that were developing the movie came up with like the look of Gurgi from the story itself by Lord Alexander, the Prydain Chronicles, but also from the idea of these people that were just inundated with hair. Like they would call them like the dogmen. They were the sideshow people. They were just hairy people. And one of the interesting things that I saw about that is they were also kind of the influence of Beauty and the Beast, But in one side, you have like the full spectrum. On one side, you have this tiny little hairy man, and then the other side, you have this like gigantic beast that's going to like terrorize people and kidnap princesses, or just village women, whatever.
And I think, how many movies can you think of that have a goofy little sidekick?
Oh, exactly.
Where you need someone for comic relief. Depending on how it obviously didn't work out this way, but maybe they were hoping that he would be like a marketable, like you could buy Gurgi stuffed animals, kids, because he's cute and cuddly. And
it's kind of like a Lilo and Stitch type thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He is really Stitch-like, isn't he? Except more annoying.
Yeah.
And furry.
And less homicidal.
Yeah.
Less homicidal.
He's just very furry.
Oh yeah, just hairy furball. But yeah, I mean, most of them. You think about it, like there's always that bumbling sidekick in a lot of these stories, to where like, oh, he messed up again, I better go fix it, and all these shenanigans ensue that help move the story along.
So in that, it is nice that he gets a bigger role at the end. I suppose.
Absolutely. Like he's kind of put up on that pedestal.
Although even that seemed like it was kind of coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be sacrificing yourself for these people that you really like, but they just kind of seem to be bothered by you this whole
like,
time.
stop stealing my stuff.
Why are you calling me master? Oh, now you're going to die for me. Like, okay.
And yeah,
I think that there should have been a lot more character development throughout and stuff.
Yes,
to
I
help
totally
get to that
agree.
point, to try to understand the characters a little bit more.
Like I said,
Instead of
7
just
minutes
sitting
in, Taryn's already screwed the whole thing up.
Yeah. But some Gurgi in Welsh myth, Gurgi had he doesn't really have very many stories of his own. He's kind of connected with other people and other stories. And he's got a brother, in probably the most famous story, a brother named Peredur, I think.
Maybe.
That's how you got that. Peredur. And Peredur goes on this quest to find a severed head. He ends up finding a severed head at the end on this platter. And Peredur is probably, in a lot of these early Welsh myths, you find names that later on we figure, that's probably just kind of the early name for Lancelot, or the early name for Gawain or Bedivere, different knights in the Arthurian legends. Peredur is... There's a good argument you can make that this is the early name for Percival, who was the first knight of Arthur's Round Table to go search for the Holy Grail. And Grail, here's some fun etymology. Who doesn't like words? You know where the word Grail comes from?
No idea.
Enlighten.
Grail, it's from a Latin word that means dish. Dish, or... I know we think about it as a cup. For the people who don't know what we mean, we keep saying Grail. The Holy Grail, we often now think of it, especially because of things like Monty Python and Indiana Jones, we think of it as a cup. And for good reason. I mean, for centuries, it's been talked about as the cup that maybe Jesus used at the Last Supper to drink wine. Certainly in the medieval period, there were a lot of connections with the Eucharist, with the Lord's Supper, bread and wine. Other myths talk about the cup being either the same cup or maybe a different cup that was used to catch the blood of Christ while he was hanging on the cross, that Joseph of Arimathea took this cup and caught the blood with it. Again, Eucharist, blood and bread and wine, wine, blood, a lot of Christian symbolism here. But in some of the earliest Grail myths, it's a more kind of abstract dish. Maybe it's a cup, maybe it's a plate. That's actually what the Latin word could be used to talk about. It could be, it's just kind of something you would put on a table, like what you would have a severed head sitting on when Peredur is going and finding a severed head. And there's actually elements of that show up in other Arthurian legends, with John the Baptist's severed head being part of the one of the guardians of the Grail, maybe in some legends. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of different threads bringing things back to the Grail, because Gurgi's brother was Peredur in Welsh myth. So Gurgi going on this quest with somebody else who is looking for a big cauldron. It's not. I don't think that would fall under the heading of a Grail or a dish. But again, in 1985, by that point, it sounds like it might be coming out of that same stew pot.
It's plausible, yeah. Definitely. Well, I can't really think of anything else that we have for the background, but we...
Did you say anything about Fluterflam?
Oh.
The fluter for flam?
The lying bard.
Yeah, Fluterflam. And we didn't even talk about the princess. Is there anything to say about the princess, really? To be honest, she seemed kind of like an empty character.
Pretty flat.
She was the person that was there for the love interest for Taryn.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate.
Basically it.
She could have been way more interesting.
Yeah, she's just fictional character in the Chronicles of Prydain.
Yeah, just not a lot on her. And her little firefly thingy.
Her bauble.
Yeah, that she just has for some reason.
It's magic.
It's just
if
magic.
you actually break down her character, let's see. Let me look.
Is she more interesting in the books?
Yeah, all of the women in her lineage are enchantresses.
Oh,
and
that would have been nice to know in the movie.
Yeah, so this bauble that she has is magic, and she uses her magic with it. So that's why it comes up at certain places and goes away at certain places in the movie, because it's not always constantly there, because she
it just
makes the bauble.
Hides in a cauldron.
Well, I would too if I was in this story. I mean, well, not the Black Cauldron, but another cauldron.
And we didn't even talk about the witches, really. The three witches.
There always has to be three witches. Let's be real.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
that's a huge theme. I mean,
nice big trope.
Yeah,
shows up a lot.
Oh,
bubble,
big trope. Okay.
Toil and trouble.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking of. I always want to say it's the youngest witch, but it's just the voluptuous witch that falls in love with Fluterflam.
The least wrinkly.
Yeah.
The least wrinkly of the witches. But I kind of got like a Three Fates type of a vibe.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, there is so much that goes into this movie that is just under the surface. It's there for entertainment value from Disney, but just digging deeper and deeper into what went into the story is just bringing up so much information that, oof.
And again, the whole point is just to tell an exciting story.
Yeah.
But where are you getting the building blocks from? You're getting it from Arthurian legend. You're getting it from the story of Bronn. You're getting it from the story of Taliesin. That's what I was going to say. As far as Fluterflam goes, there's this name that shows up a lot in the Mabinogion and different Welsh books. Taliesin was this famous bard, this great, probably the greatest bard in the world, who would go on adventures. There's stories where he adventures with Bronn. There's stories where he goes on adventures with King Arthur, and so it's nice. It's nice that Taryn has the greatest bard in the world too.
Heck yeah!
In the person of Fluterflam,
greatest
bard, strangest name.
Fluterflam sounds.
I love it. There's so many F's.
Seriously, though, it does sound kind of Scandinavian for some Welsh character. So I mean, we have the witches, we have Fluterflam, we have the princess. I'm not going to try to say her name again. Like who else showed up in the story that we haven't really mentioned? Like
Creeper.
The Creeper.
Oh, Creeper.
A little lizard man.
I was really hoping. I don't think it happened. Maybe I missed it. Did Gurgi and Creeper ever fight?
That would have been
No.
amazing.
I
That
was
would've been
really
awesome.
hoping for that because you've got these two little scrawny henchmen on each side, and I wanted a henchman showdown. That didn't happen.
No,
That'd be great.
that would have been sweet. We also have the fair folk.
Yeah, the fair folk. Actually, that was something I wanted to talk about because that's another thing that reminds me a lot of Lord of the Rings. Because
Oh.
in the books,
Oh, sorry. I just had a little heart attack. But go ahead.
sorry, Dolly isn't a fairy in the books. He's a dwarf
Oh,
who carries a battle axe.
that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. And the fair folk, like there are the fairies, but there's also dwarves and giants, like you mentioned earlier. And Dolly is the one that goes with them to the marshes of Morva and everything, but he's not supposed to be this little dinky tiny fairy that gets blamed for everything in the fair folk kingdom underground. Like in the movie, he's actually this really grumpy, like in the movie, but he's grumpy dwarf, beard, battle axe,
Yeah, and he does.
ready for stuff to
he
go
does
down.
He actually does things. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's used
He doesn't just go bye and leave.
Tolkien was not a fan of the tiny little fairy idea. I mean, he held to a much more Shakespearean kind of view of the fairies as these big, elves being these regal, majestic, impressive thing, not these tiny little imps necessarily.
Like King Idaleg.
just strange people from the other world that steal your babies.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, those are interesting, and they show up a lot in different stories. But I think Tolkien would die a little bit if fairies reminded you of Lord of the Rings.
No.
Why?
The original Dolly, that was the
that
dwarf.
is- yes,
Yeah,
now I
Yes,
see what
that's
you're
what
saying.
reminded me
The
of it. If I
dwarf.
had just watched the movie and not had that little bit of background knowledge, I wouldn't have even put it
I
together.
wonder why they changed that. Well, they didn't have to change him into
Because it's Disney.
little.
And they had the little
They
fairy
didn't want it to be rated
Tinkerbell
PG-13. They just wanted to
cells
be
Yeah.
rated.
that they had to
That's
reuse.
right. They had to
Considering
get the little.
I
Tinkerbell
swear
cameo.
Tinkerbell showed up in
I
that
think
scene.
you're right.
I'm pretty sure.
We both said it at the same time.
Yeah, like,
so-
that's
I think
Tinkerbell.
I think
yeah.
they kept her a little bit fuzzy so people would.
Yeah.
or we're
pay
wrong
attention.
together.
Or, yeah.
But I'm with you.
We'll pull it up.
Other than that, I had a thought and my thought is gone.
It happens. It happens.
So, what would you say if we wanted to talk about the point of this movie? I mean, the point of this movie on the first level is always to be entertaining.
Yeah.
But as far as any kind of message you can draw from it, what would you say you would get out of it there?
Well, you have the classic fight between good versus evil.
Easy.
Easy.
Yes.
And then you have
And
the
who wins?
good.
Well, okay. Yeah, the good guys.
The good guys.
The good guys in this story, this movie at least. And then you also have the, I'm not going to say underlying theme, but you have the theme of self-sacrifice coming in with destroying the cauldron.
Yeah, exactly. If we haven't made it clear, at the very end, the three witches say that there's no way to destroy the cauldron, but you can render it useless by a person or a living thing.
being.
Yeah, a living thing of its own accord, putting itself inside the cauldron to destroy it. But that person will not come out alive. Hence the reason that we've talked about, destroying the cauldron from the inside, but it kills you. All these different stories come into play that, the only way to defeat the cauldron is self-sacrifice. And who ends up falling into the cauldron? Jumping, I guess.
It would be jumping. Gurgi.
Gurgi. Yeah, the really annoying sidekick that nobody understands why. They're like, yeah, I don't have any friends.
Okay, bye.
Bye. So,
But you have that underlying theme of self-sacrifice. And, I think that kind of gets glossed over in the movie a little bit because the witches, in the end, want the cauldron back.
yeah.
But everything comes at a price, so they make them bring...
Yeah. Well,
They
and
make the witches
it was
bring
Fluter
Gurgi
Flam that came back and said, hey, you can't just take that. I know it's useless, but hey, we bargain here. we trade.
And then Turin had to make his own kind of sacrifice, didn't he?
Oh,
Because
definitely.
he could have had his sword back, but he decided to sacrifice his hopes and dreams for the sake of having his friend back.
Yeah.
His friend.
His
And
little
then
friend calls
Gurgi
him
tries to
master.
steal an apple, and then he realizes, oh wait, I'm alive. They're like, wow, it's still annoying, but he's adorable now.
And you're alive again, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Here's the fun word for that. It's the eukatastrophe. This is a word Tolkien invented. Eukatastrophe. I told you, just put a dime in a jar every time I say Tolkien's name, and you'll be able to go buy yourself something nice after every episode. But Tolkien talked about this being one of the main things that a good fairy story does. And by fairy story, he's not talking about fairies like the little people. He has a different idea. Basically, any kind of myth or folklore story like this. He talks about a few different functions that they serve, and we'll probably talk about some of the others as we go through other things. But the third and final one is the eukatastrophe. It's the happy ending. It's the consolation that we feel when everything seems horrible and everything seems like it's all hope is lost, and then the clouds part and the sun breaks through and you see that good really does win. Love does prevail. It looks like everything is really horrible. That yes, they've defeated the Horned King, but Gurgi's dead, and there's nothing they can do about that until he comes back to life. And that moment of blessed surprise, Tolkien would say, that right there, that's that joy that you feel in that moment when Gurgi comes back to life, is what fairy tales do better than any other kind of story. They give you that happy surprise. It's catastrophic in that it's sudden and it's unexpected, but it's not a bad catastrophe. It's a eukatastrophe. EU means it's the Greek prefix for good.
Yeah.
So good catastrophe.
It's that.
Or the happy ending.
It's like when you go to a crane machine and then the crane machine falls apart in the last minute, but you still get a little piece of candy, or you're at quarterback.
You get something out of the vending machine and it gives you
Two
things
instead of one.
Yeah.
It's the best day ever.
But it has to get stuck first. You can't forget that. It has to get stuck first, and then you smack it, and then two pop out. Boom.
And correction to what I said earlier, looking it up now, Princess Eilonwy's bauble, apparently in the books, is called a peladrin? I don't know. It's Welsh. Yeah, so it is an actual
Wait,
object.
say it again?
Peladrin?
Peladrin.
Pelydryn.
Interesting.
That is.
Sounds kind of like those bright and shining balls called Palantir in The Lord of the Rings. Okay, I'm not gonna draw everything back to Lord of the Rings, guys. But
Well, it is kind of hard with this topic.
This
hard
one
not
right
to-
here
there's,
is
like,
pretty.
really close.
Yeah.
Once we start getting into some other stories, I don't think we're going to have that problem as much. But
yeah, probably not. It's not a problem.
it's not a problem.
What are you
it's just
talking about?
bringing things all back to a single point.
Oh yeah. There's a lot that you could really just pull apart, and you got to admit there's quite a few similarities.
And that's I think with the Black Cauldron movie especially, that like I was saying at the beginning, I think that's probably maybe intentional somewhat, that they're trying to pattern it after this other thing that had kind of become popular at that point. I mean, in the 80s, The Lord of the Rings was nowhere near as popular as it is now, but it was. I mean, if you were into the Black Cauldron, if you knew the Black Cauldron, you probably would have known Lord of the Rings. Unless you were a kid, but
Well, I think that's why I've never put it together before, because I didn't watch Lord of the Rings until my senior year of high school. And
read Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Read their
excuse
books.
Read and watched. We had to do both.
Yeah.
But the Black Cauldron was something that I had watched when I was like little, so I
Yeah.
didn't even think of putting those two together when looking into their backstories and things like that.
So, is there anything you wish would have been done differently about the Black Cauldron movie? Like if they were going to remake it, like they might. I don't know. What do you hope they're going to do differently?
I would have liked the climax to be just a little bit more epic. It just seemed so subdued. It was like, oh, an army of dead soldiers is walking, and then they fall over.
Yeah, they were only
That's
in the
exactly
movie.
how I felt.
We should have timed it. They're only in the movie for like 2 minutes.
I feel like
And it was like, oh, this is a thing. And then, oh, the thing is over.
the thing that really like caught me off guard was how subdued every important piece of the film was portrayed. I mean, it was like, okay, we just found out that this pig has the ability to have visions and see the future and stuff like that. Okay, why is this like not a bigger deal?
Yeah, they just kind of take.
They're just kind of like, oh, this pig can see things. You got to take this pig to the other side of the forest so nobody gets the pig.
Okay.
And then, okay.
Yeah, but in their defense, at that point, you've only met 2 human characters.
Yeah, that's
So
that's true.
it all comes down to the one that had no idea what was going on.
But it's just like, there's no, like, there's like,
That's.
I just thought you were a normal pig.
It feels
and
like
then
it's
boom.
rushed
Yeah.
building.
Very, very rushed.
And so
I think they need to like spend a little more time if they, redo it, and
they
then
redo. Yeah, maybe a mini series or
Ooh, a miniseries.
they'll probably.
I
do a
could get down with
trilogy.
that.
yeah, it just seemed so confined and rushed that it seemed like the whole thing happened within the. Was there really a nighttime?
Yeah, that's true.
I guess it just seems like, okay, it's just
Maybe when
building
they were
and
in
building
one
and
of the
building and
dungeons.
building and building and done.
Yeah.
There's no real ebb and flow of. It's just like, okay, this happens on top of that, this happens on top of that. There's no
Yeah.
like even like a minor storyline would have been welcome, I think.
Other than vague.
The failed romantic
attraction.
yeah.
That's what I hope if they redo it. I hope, and I'm sure they will, give Elonwe a bigger part as something more than just pretty girl to be rescued. Because that's really all she felt like to me in this movie, that she was almost more like a prop.
Yeah, yeah.
That she was just the princess in the tower. That although I guess she does rescue Taryn at the beginning, but still she doesn't really do.
She's an afterthought.
Yeah, she doesn't really do
as
much.
soon as that happens.
And it's such a waste, because I wanted to know more about her enchantress powers or whatever that bauble was, and
Yeah,
I
it's
wanted
not
to
something
see
that's
her,
explained at all.
Her
Yeah.
fight.
That's my bauble.
Fight somebody.
Well, okay.
It likes to play with the rats.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yeah.
So a lot of the characters I think suffer from being underdeveloped, but she was the one. Maybe because she was the only female character other than the witches. I guess there was that cute little girl fairy too, who sounded like she was 5 years old.
I'm pretty sure she was 5 years old.
Adorable.
So other than the witches and baby fairy,
Yeah.
she's the only female character, and I think maybe that's why she stands out as being particularly unsatisfying.
It just clicked in my mind. The fairies that are in this movie remind me so much of the Smurfs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
They looked like Smurfs.
Like King
Smurfs.
Idleegg is like Papa Smurf.
He had
Same
a beard,
color
didn't he?
scheme and everything.
Didn't he
Yeah,
have a
Yeah.
really big
red
bushy
and
beard?
white, and then big bushy beard.
Okay.
Do you guys have any trivia for this
Ooh,
movie?
yes.
I have some things, and I want to see if I can know this already.
Okay. What when the Black Cauldron, the sound effect that they use for the Black Cauldron, the big crashing noise, where did they get that crashing noise?
Oh God, I have no idea. Come on, sound guy.
Hey. Should have paid attention.
I know it sounded like stuff was stretching throughout the entire thing. I was thinking, I don't think ground sounds like elastic.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought the sound was kind of funny?
Yeah, I just didn't feel like it fit 100%.
Well, before you give us the answer, I just hope that they do like the whole Michael Bay trailer sound for it from here on out. If they do just a wah every time they show it on screen, just wah.
The Black Cauldron. You mean they get the?
That's the Black Cauldron sound effect.
It's the noise from a space shuttle launch.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
That's cool.
Yeah.
that is pretty cool.
Man, that's way cooler than I thought it was gonna be.
I never would have guessed that.
I would have never guessed that too.
in 1,000 years.
It's like I've never actually heard that except for on TV when it's like.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I have a piece of trivia.
Yeah.
True or false? The Black Cauldron was the first Disney animated feature to not contain any songs, neither performed by characters or in the background.
Well, it had
There was a
soundtrack
score.
in the background.
Yeah.
There was a score, but there was no lyrics. And
Oh, there was no like actual licensed song.
yeah.
I guess I'd say. Well, you said the first one. I'm going to say true. I got a
Are we
50-50
talking
shot.
like Steamboat Willie type stuff?
Well, it is true that it doesn't contain any songs that are performed
Yeah,
by
it's not a-
characters
not a
or
musical.
anything.
Because I was thinking like, yeah, well, Steamboat Willie, he's whistling the whole time. But I mean, like, there's also
Well, that's
Yeah.
a performance by a character.
all the different ones, like the silly symphonies and stuff like that.
But
Yeah, that's what
but
there's a
feature
lot.
movies.
Feature
Maybe
movies.
feature
That's
movies.
yeah.
Yeah, and this was actually the only the second movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs being the first to have completed scenes cut prior to its release.
I can see that.
Just because they were trying to get the
I
rating.
think they were trying to get the rating down
makes
and
sense.
get the time down.
Oh, I would love. I wonder if they've done this, but I would love to see a director's,
Director's
cut with
cut.
all of
I was
that.
just thinking that
That'd
same
be
thing.
amazing.
I want the R-rated Black Cauldron cut.
Maybe we could
With all
stop
the
complaining
scary stuff.
about all the rushed
Maybe.
storytelling.
Well, yeah, it would have to be 3 hours long to satisfy some of these complaints, though.
We'd have to like do the Hobbit trilogy type
Oh
thing.
God, no, no! How dare you?
More Tolkien heart attacks.
Yeah.
Do you have any?
I don't
trivia?
have a question, but this is the last. I don't know if there are others before it, but this was Tim Burton's last collaboration with Disney. He was one of the concept artists for this.
Really?
That actually explains so much.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't think Johnny Depp was in this movie. But
It was pre-relationship.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, dang.
All
Oh,
right.
wait. That's right there on my computer. Tim Burton's last and only other involvement with a Disney animated film before he became a filmmaker in his own right.
Nice.
Very nice.
All right.
So, do we want to do ratings for movies? Is that a good thing to do?
I don't know.
No, is that
Ooh,
a
the
bad
world is
idea?
our oyster.
I give it 4 out of 5 stars, or I don't know. We'd have to have a good rating system.
I rated a solid kerfuffle.
I give it 3 marshmallows and a chocolate bar.
You?
In that case, I give it the graham crackers.
Is it? Wait. Marshmallows good or bad?
I think they're good. I think this movie could have been better, but for what it is, and especially if you saw it as a kid, I think it's easier for me to be more critical of it because I didn't grow up watching it. Like we watched,
Yeah, like
a different movie, but similar example. I watched The Princess Bride with my wife not too long ago because she'd never seen it as a kid.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I was just dying left and right because I love that movie, and she was just shrugging like, "Yeah, okay, that's whatever." Now I see why you say that all the time. Okay, that's cool.
Inconceivable. Yeah.
But she hadn't grown up seeing it, so it was easier for her to be critical
Exactly.
of it. And I think it's easier for me to be critical of this for the same reason. Just 'cause-
instead of me just sitting there laughing at every other thing.
I mean, it was funny. I don't think it's necessarily a bad movie, but at the same time, I don't think it's.
if we're gonna be rating it with candy, I give it one chocolate Easter bunny.
Oh,
Yeah.
With the ears or without the ears?
Well, you know how it's like, it looks awesome and you're excited, and then you take a bite and it's just kind of like chocolate and it's hollow.
and it's kind of cheap.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I'm with you.
That makes so much sense.
And maybe you can serve the bunny with a decapitated head on a platter.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
And that'll really fit.
a chocolate bunny head on a platter.
There it is. Just like Peredur, Gurgi's brother, found.
We just found the Holy Grail.
We found the Holy Grail. That's it. I don't think we can beat that.
No. So that means we should end the podcast right now because there's nowhere else
There's
we can
no
go.
coming back.
Place to go but down.
Well, with that being said, we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and make sure you come back next time. We're going to be doing more movies. We're going to be talking about more philosophy and more fairy tales. And I hope you enjoy, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.